Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are looking at my last Creator Cup match, who I played Damian Nick, who is around the 1500 rapid player. It was a bit of a mismatch, but some surprising things happened. So this video is just going to be from the live stream, which was commentated on Houseline's Twitch by Joe Bruin and Bouncing Across. They did an excellent job, and I'm looking forward to playing this Sunday once again, and this match is very, very important. We are taking on Car Crash, and we have to win this if we want to move on to the winners bracket or the championship bracket. Unfortunately, I lost my first match, so it put me behind quite a bit. This tournament is set up just like PogChamps. There's 16 players and 4 different brackets, and the top 2 move on to the championship, and then the bottom 2 move on. There's still going to be chess, and we are streaming this live every single weekend, so make sure you tune in, and I hope you enjoy.
Just from all the players, including them going to the consolation bracket, even if they don't make it to the championship bracket. You know, it's always not so fun to see when players are just immediately eliminated and have no, future games after like 1 or 2 games. It's nice to see people go on to a further bracket.
Yeah, and I think this is very reminiscent of the PogChamps format. It might be a copy, maybe a little bit different time control or
Yeah.
tiebreak rules. But yeah, I think Damian's a cool guy. I've definitely tuned into his stream and uh, thanks again to Creator Cup for putting a bit of a spotlight on these players. Apex Chess, I'm less familiar with, but he is one of the higher rated players, and it looks like he's been struggling so far in this group stage. So this is going to be a really good opportunity for him to get some much needed points on the board against one of the lowest seeds.
So Damien is playing the lion and potentially the black lion, which might be Ginger GM influenced. I'm not sure, but interesting opening choice. I like it. It's kind of cagey. Generally the engine prefers white by quite a bit because white takes the entire center, but it's interesting. Black has their own counterplay with Queen A5, sometimes B5 ideas. Typically black fianchettos, but you also sometimes see E5, Bishop E7. Yeah, which is what I think Damien's going for. And yeah, it's a cool setup for black. I think this is a good try against Apex. It's a significant rating mismatch. You've got to do something a little bit unconventional that your opponent's not seen before, and something that you're familiar with. So I like it.
Yeah, the line defense. I don't know if I've heard of this, but I do like White's center. I like having the pawns on E4, D4, both knights out. White's already ready to castle, and actually could do so right now, and does so. Black still has some development to do, maybe Bishop E7, getting rid of castle, very solid. So good play so far. Interestingly, I like White in their center, but the computer is saying that Black has played with perfect accuracy so far. Meanwhile, White's hit 95.3.
I think because black has been all in book and white played something that's not book first. I don't think it has anything to do with
How
one
accurate.
side playing better than the other. Yeah. I think Chesscom just doesn't consider accuracy when moves are still in book. There's actually a funny thing about that, since a lot of pretty dubious openings now are in book, like the Alien Gambit and openings like that. You can play very, very suspiciously and still get a perfect game on chess.com, because it doesn't consider book moves in the accuracy.
Bishop E7 has been played here by Mr. Nick, looking to castle. Same side castles. Probably this dark square bishop wants to come out at some point. Maybe you could play rook e1. Okay, bishop d2. It's a little passive, but it does help complete development. White just needs to get the queen out at some point. Meanwhile, black
Yeah.
still has some work to do.
So typical black lion stuff. I think you play like queen c7 and then if you really want to go crazy, I think you don't castle and you play like h6 g5. So we'll see how ambitious Damien is. I think the idea is like queen c7, h6 g5, knight f8, knight g6, and then the knight comes to f4. I'm not sure if Damien knows all of this about the lion slash black lion. I kind of don't know also what makes a lion a black lion. It might be one of those things like, did you see Fabiano's chessable course, the Dark Archangel? I think it's kind of
I've
like that, where the
I've heard of
players
it.
sort of they add the name. I don't think that the Dark Archangel is really a name of an opening. Same with the Black Lion. It might not be an actual line, in the chess.com database, but colloquially, I think if he goes for queen c7, h6, g5, knight f8, knight g6, knight f4, um, people would think of that as the Black Lion.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
never
With that
even heard
said,
of that opening, so
yeah. I guess you have to watch some some Ginger GM content.
yeah, shout out to the Ginger GM,
Yeah.
Simon Williams, for anyone that doesn't know. But castles and maybe a little less aggressive, but still very solid. Definitely one of the top
Yeah.
moves.
Not as fun. Makes me think that probably he sort of just played the Black Lion or the Lion and didn't really know the typical ideas, because this is fine for black, but nothing special anymore. Now white just kind of has an advantage. I don't really think there's too much to say. I don't think white's development is perfect either. White shouldn't. Some of the pieces feel slightly misplaced, but I think that white is still much better. Eventually, either the knight on c3 will move and we'll get c3 or c4, or the knight on f3 will move and we'll get f4. And I think that white has a number of pleasant choices here. And yeah, just h3. Okay, still waiting, but eventually white has to do something. Maybe a4, maybe moving one of the knights and playing f4 or c4. I think as black, you probably continue to wait with something like queen c7. B5 is an idea, but I don't know if it's particularly effective here.
Yeah, let's maybe tune in and listen into what Damien thinks.
Yeah.
He's listening to some music.
I'm gonna give all my
Little karaoke.
very passive. I mean, I know I'm not supposed to do this normally.
Okay, he's thinking c5. Okay, he plays a5.
It's not good for me. We don't want to close that off. So maybe, yeah, we're just gonna do another
Just grabbing
waiting
space.
move. Amazing how we got this.
I love the karaoke. He's just vibing right now. Maybe let's tune into his opponent Apex and see.
Yeah,
I mean, I want to
think
reroute the knight anyways.
okay, rewriting the knight is a really good idea. I think he's probably going to play knight e2 is my guess.
Here, we can
Okay,
play
knight
this.
h2. Similar.
Okay, let's.
Okay,
let's
but he's
not
hanging
take too
d4.
long. Let's put the knight on h2.
Oops, and he kind of overlooked
I think
that.
he's gonna try.
Let's
to
see.
Yeah.
Let's see if
He wants to win this
Damien
pawn,
can
which
capitalize on that.
maybe we have to
That's
respond
actually a
with
huge pawn
No,
to
no, but
lose
the
for
bishop's there.
white. Like that fully turns. Oh,
Okay,
okay.
he did
Quickly king
not.
h8.
Also hangs this pawn. Okay. I'm an.
Okay,
I'm-
and Apex
I
is
just
realizing.
straight up hung a pawn.
I'm a
what
blank.
he's
I think we can
expecting
fill in the blank. He omitted the words,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's
Now I
unfortunate
probably should.
drop, but lucky for Apex that Damien did not
Take,
capitalize.
Yeah, that was a big
Takes,
opportunity
knight
for
takes. What move
Damien,
that is the
and
bishop.
luckily for Apex,
Okay,
he
I think I
didn't
need to take though.
take it.
Yeah. But okay, now white clarifies the tension in the center, and that's usually not what white wants to do, and that's kind of because he played knight h2. I think if he'd played a plan like knight e2 and brought the other knight to g3, that would have made a lot of sense, and then maybe played c3 or c4. But yeah, as it stands, I think black is kind of doing fine. It's just unfortunate that they didn't capitalize on taking d4. Then black would have been more than fine.
Yeah, that would have been really interesting. had Damien done it, but I think he was kind of a little still on autopilot early on and just kind of cruising through the moves. Didn't really quite dive into what could have taken advantage of this knight h2 maneuver.
Yeah.
So it takes back on e5 with a
There's
knight, pressure on the bishop, but
I'm
also, yeah, just f4, I was going to say.
Yeah, there's some queen b6 check ideas, but luckily there's nothing too nefarious on that diagonal for white, except for that maybe they can take on b2, like queen b6, queen takes b2. It's legal. I don't know how much we want that b2 pawn, but yeah, it looks like a pawn. Um, Maybe our queen gets trapped there. It looks a little dicey. Um, I still would play queen b6 check and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, I think he's actually kind of pointing at it a little bit. He's drawing some interesting arrow. He might just push his b pawn to get his bishop to a6 is another idea he's highlighting.
Yes,
Maybe we can listen in on him.
do that.
He's listening to some Weezer now.
And then my knight's kind of not in a great spot. I guess we can bring it back.
I don't know, Joe. What do you think? Would you
like that.
be greedy? Would you take the cookie and play queen b6, queen takes b2, or does it feel too dicey? Does it feel like your queen's gonna get trapped there?
Whatever.
I am definitely a notorious pawn grabber. I think one problem with taking on b2 is your queen is actually like really limited on squares. You can go to a3, of course, um, but it's kind of not so clear after that. He doesn't go for it.
We take the knight.
I would have been interested to see if he went for it. I think maybe when you're the lower rated player, you can get a little nervous about getting your queen trapped, rightfully so, and giving up a lot of counterplay. So the pawn might not be worth it in the end.
I think throughout the Creator Cup, though, we see examples of players sort of more so trusting their opponents too much than not trusting their opponents enough. You know, a lot of times we get positions where they very much could have taken pawns or won exchanges or checkmated, and we're just like, no, that probably, surely my opponent didn't hang that. They're a good player.
Yeah. Well, Apex just playing in the center, and this is kind of why you really like having the strong center, is that you can kind of take the space with the pawns. And I think Apex kind of really missed an opportunity there to play f5, really follow up, get the pawn duo in Black's half of the camp, and really just kind of putting the pressure on Black, like maybe even threatening f6.
On the other hand, what is Black going to do about it? I guess play f5 themselves, or like, how do you respond to
Here,
the threat of f5?
that is a great question. You can't really put like a bishop on f5 because
G4 stuff.
g4 is annoying, although that might hang d3 for the time being.
True. We can't play g4 immediately. Maybe bishop f5 is good at this moment.
It feels very short term though, because
Yeah.
maybe okay, f5 has been played.
It's interesting, but now I wonder where Black's counterplay is, because now everything's closed on this side of the board. So, I mean, maybe you could put your bishop on e6. That's nice blockading piece for the moment, but now Black has to start playing somewhere, maybe on the queen side, but I don't know. I kind of get the impression that giving White a protected passer is
Probably
it's
not the best.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an overreaction to White's attack, and I think now White sure is not going to mate Black, but you're going to suffer here. Like a knight can come to d4, or they can just play pawn d4, and this e5 pawn, it's cemento. It's going to be there for probably the whole game, and there's not really much you can do about it.
Cemento sounds like a superhero
Yeah.
whose superpowers involve cement. So, but what's interesting? You mentioned the pawn
eventually.
d4. You mentioned knight d4. These are all great moves, and you know what would prevent that?
What would prevent that?
If Black just plays d4 right now.
SSP. He's learning. No, yeah, d4 would probably be a good move. It makes some sense. I think on the other hand, like once you play d4. I guess e4 is defended by f5 permanently, so maybe that's good, but you do have to then defend the d4 pawn. So you have to commit to d4, c5, and that'll leave us a weak square on c4 possibly. So you're always leaving behind weaknesses to prevent white from getting their own counterplay.
Yeah, I think f5 wasn't so great because you do get this really good pawn on e5. You said the connected passer for white, so it's a very long-term advantage, and that's why Apex didn't really take en passant.
Yeah.
But the computer like preferred f6 to try to contest white's center, and the move that white could and should play now is d4.
Mhm.
So d4 from black, I agree, it's not very intuitive. It looks almost weakening actually, because you're breaking your pawn chain and kind of putting a pawn where it's not really supported by other pawns. But I think the advantage that white gets after they play d4,
Is great. Yeah,
yeah,
it's very strong.
that pawn structure is huge.
Another point to d4 that maybe was somewhat related to that, but also indirectly, is that you give more scope to your light square bishop when it comes to e6. So if you had played d4, c5, then suddenly you carved out light squares for your bishop to go bishop e6, and then it's looking at maybe bishop d5, or the bishop has squares on c4 and b3. Whereas now, if white plays d4, your light square bishop is just sad permanently. You can try for some idea like b6, bishop a6, but it's slow, and once you play b6, then c6 becomes weak, and
Oh,
wow. No, 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 no. I don't I mean I get it. You want the open e file, but this is too much. This is too soon. We weren't ready to do this. The knight on e5 is great. Knight g6 is a threat for sure. It's a very big threat, but at the cost of our amazing pawn. What do you think about that, Joe?
yeah, Apex is getting a little too creative here. I like that he's favoring the piece activity, but I think you're right in that he gave up too much. That pawn was a huge advantage. It was like pretty much white's advantage in the position. That's the downside of playing f5. Um, but it's going to be interesting to see if Damian Nick's going to be able to properly capitalize on that free pawn. So he guards the fork on g6, bring the bishop back to f7. The computer doesn't like it that much, apparently because white can play queen b3, which is
I mean, queen b3
not
looks like a move. I don't know why that's so good, but yeah, I mean
not that it's
b5
that
and
great.
then
Yeah, I
well, what
figure white is really going aggressive. I think they would much rather bring the queen to like f3 to g3 or
the
something.
idea actually after queen b3 b5? Are you just like attacking the c file or something? I actually don't really
I think you're just
understand
going
the
after the b. Yeah, what are you saying? b5. Well, b if you move the b pawn, you're hanging the c6
c6 is
pawn.
hanging. Oh,
Yeah.
it's just hanging immediately. Yeah,
But
okay. You
wow,
can't
he's
play
going
e5.
even more aggressive than I even was considering. g4. So Apex is just taking the gloves off, and he's absolutely swinging right now.
Yeah, a move that my co-commentator was talking to me about, Anushka. She was saying g5 is an idea for black. That's why they played h6. But I think that White was saying, no, no, I'm going to get g4 before you even try to get g5. I'm coming first.
Welcome to Ollie. Ollie tuning in. Rough games today, but Ollie is definitely one of the fan favorites. Always good to have Ollie around, and Ollie still has some games left to be played. So
Yeah.
definitely be sure
Shout out
to
Ollie. Played
go
some
follow
really
him.
great games until, the games fell apart later. But I think that, an advantage in both games, and really played some excellent chess for most of the games.
Yes, Ollie, he's absolutely dominating the openings. He's getting great positions. He just needs to work on a bit of the end game technique and time management. I think that could go a long way for him.
Yeah. I think yeah, White's play is looking good here, but also, it is a little bit double-edged now that you've opened your king as well. It's not like this is a complete freehand attack for White. Some idea like d4 is still on the docket for Black, with queen d5 check. Um or bishop d5 check. It doesn't feel immediately obvious that White is just crushing here.
Yeah, rook g1, and you're really disincentivized to take the knight, even though the knight seems like it's a really good piece, because your bishop's a really important defender of checkmate on g7. That
Yeah.
being said, I feel like knight to d7 is kind of a big threat here.
Yeah, I keep wanting to play b5 and then c6 is just always hanging. It's very frustrating. And also d4 feels like a great move, but then we're allowing the knight to come to e4.
Yeah,
So we just can't really. We're almost breaking out as black. It's really. I think white is playing in sort of a risky way, but it's not bad. It's actually probably good for white how this is turning out. But I don't know. I mean, it's still a game. I think that while white's play seems convincing, I don't really see a mate for white exactly yet. White has some threats, but I think that if black responds to them, it's still not exactly obvious how white is winning this game. And if the game continues on and the pieces start moving around, maybe eventually d4 will be powerful and the king will regret opening itself up with moves like g4.
Ooh, that's a blunder because knight
Yeah.
takes f7.
And
You're
then queen
removing the
g6.
defender. I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, I like Apex may not be playing the best moves, the best chess, but he's brought enough pressure mixed with the time control, getting down to a minute here for Damien, where the blunder has now just arrived. So there is knight h6 blocking the
Yeah.
check, defending the rook, but I think a move just like f5, and you're really bringing a lot of the heat, and the rook on the g file looks perfect.
F5, you want to play a move like king g8 defending your rook, but then you're hanging your knight on h6.
Exactly.
So-
f5 played, and now you have to be really precise here. And
Yeah, I don't even know. Is there even precision to save this game?
computer's saying take on c3 is the best try.
Okay, that
And
does seem like an interesting try. I don't know. Yeah, that seems hard to play, but okay.
this, you're
Um,
defending the rook, it's true, but can we not just take on h6? Wow. Takes, if you take the
Yeah.
pawn, there's rook block, and you're gonna get the h pawn in return. Okay, rook e1 first. I like this move a lot, actually. Just inconveniencing the queen and bringing that last piece into the play.
Oh, that's a good point. If you took on h6 twice, it's very easy to fall into rook h7, and actually the cards might completely turn because h3 is falling with check and your king has to run out. Yeah, that could have been very dangerous, but Apex avoiding the drama there.
Yeah, let's maybe give a listen into Apex while he's thinking here for some of those
Yeah.
moves.
Oh, by the way,
Okay.
maybe Oh no, f5 not
Takes,
hanging
he
because there's rook
loses to
h6 check.
this. Rook g6, just bringing more heat. Love Apex's attack. I don't see Damien holding here with less than a
Also
minute.
bring the other rook in.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to blunder here too. Like queen f5 is a blunder, even though it feels like you can trade stuff.
This knight's
There's
just not
an
playing, which
in-between
is
move, rook
kind of
h6.
bad, but
Yeah, one of the best moves
What
it's
can we do?
recommending is
He's
king
got 30
g8, as
seconds.
sad as that is.
Yeah, I don't know what I would try to play here. Maybe I would play bishop takes c3, even though I think it loses. Just to try to play queen
Saying
f5.
bishop g5 is another try, but this looks so sad.
Okay.
So
What's
okay.
the
So
KO,
you just
though?
take on h6 with the bishop, surely.
Yeah.
we're picking up
Okay,
the
yeah.
bishop.
Okay, he does
That
that,
should
and
be
now
Takes.
Rook
Takes here.
takes?
okay,
Is
you
there
could
a
do.
win?
I would do queen
Square
takes
takes
because
here,
rook
right?
block is forced,
What is
and then
it?
you
Takes
take on
here.
g8, king takes, and then you have. Wait, I
King takes.
was gonna say queen
takes.
takes on f6, but
Maybe you could just play rook
Right.
g1 first instead of queen f6.
Takes. Here.
No,
this
but then
is
maybe
for
bishop
takes,
g7.
takes,
wow, this is
takes.
actually
know.
really curious how precise you kind of have to be
Ah,
here
but
to have the
be careful,
best
this
I think because
combination.
It is not.
yeah,
so
it's
simple.
just because white's king also
Also
just
just
had to
keep
expose
thinking
itself
about
quite a
it.
bit to get this attack rolling. It's
We're
not
here,
like a one-way street.
Here.
There's definitely some weirdness going on.
Yeah.
It's very easy for this to blunder. I mean, I honestly would not call this game until it's like very clearly like until a piece has been blundered because at the moment, yeah, okay, I think rook
Let's just
g1
double up.
is a natural move. It makes sense as a human.
Yeah, but computer says that Damien can neutralize
Keep
after
putting
trading on g6, which is one of the only moves here.
Yeah, that's both tough to play and yeah, okay, now
Ooh,
that hangs
okay,
the
that's
bishop.
yeah,
That
it's a
hangs
free
the
bishop there. So
Nice.
Damien in time pressure, unable to find
Is
a
that a move?
defense.
I think that would have been very hard to defend, even if they had
Oh,
found that move. Whoa.
the computer likes black.
I just want to keep the pressure.
Apex gives him a
Checkmate,
oh, made
he won!
one!
What?
Queen
Oh
h3!
my god! Oh my god! That's
He's done it!
unbelievable. Damien, what a huge upset on Apex Chess. Do we get the reaction?
Oh,
Apex?
He just
Were we
popped
on?
off his chair.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What an insane hang.
Hold up!
That's unbelievable. I did not think that would happen. And he found it so quickly, too. He was
He's
so ready for
screaming.
that checkmate.
That was huge.
Oh my goodness. What a
Wait.
massive blunder by Apex. That is devastating. Wow. And it was from a great position.
Oh my gosh!
How much time was there when
That
he
was insane!
didn't take the bishop on g5? That was wow. I mean, there was some time pressure, but that was a crazy
15 seconds
turnaround.
on the clock, baby!
Wow.
Clutch.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Absolutely clutch. That has to be the biggest upset of Creator Cup so
I thought my
far.
chances were over.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was never extremely easy. That's what a weird position.
Oh my god.
It was such a weird game.
Oh man.
He's riding a high right now.
That's a high. That's a high, dude. I'm gonna be chasing this high for the rest of my life. This is a problem now. Whoa.
I called it. Yeah, no, this is incredible. Let's give a little bit of a replay here. I'm kind of curious
Oh my gosh.
about this analysis because we mentioned just taking on h6 looks so simple, but after pawn takes, I want to look at this line rook takes. Rook h7, and the computer just saying it's like pretty much dead equal. Right, so black has sufficiently been able to defend here.
What move is this?
We're looking at rook takes h6.
Yeah, but on what move?
On move 26.
Ah.
So what you needed was queen takes, rook h7, rook takes g8, king takes g8, and you have queen. Apparently, you could take on f6. This was the line that I saw. You can also give this queen to g6 check, interestingly. And
Yeah,
if
because
bishop,
at first I was thinking rook g1, but bishop g7 is actually really annoying
No,
there
this
because your
doesn't
queen
work.
is still attacked and then h3 is hanging.
rook e8 is a winning shot here, which would have been really nice. Also, yeah, queen takes. Maybe he was nervous about this because of rook takes h3, but just king g2 and, you're up a piece, right? So
I think it says that the intermezzo queen g6 is a little bit better, but I think practically speaking, you just take on f6 and then you play king g2, and I mean, just a rook and queen, you're not really getting mated, right? The queen on f6 is too strong, and probably black's getting mated before you.
Yeah.
You're coming in, and
so
I honestly, yeah, probably just a misassessment, thinking that there were other ways to win that were simpler, but actually in trying to find the simpler win, it got complicated. And yes, still another opportunity after bishop g5. I don't think rook takes g6 was that obvious why black is okay there. Like rook g6, it just says queen e7, and apparently black is somehow okay, question mark. I don't know.
I know it's wild, but you have the move
that's-
rook f6, which defends the pawn on h6. It hits the queen, and if you play queen back to h5, then the bishop can now move to like e3 apparently, and just by a miracle, black's position is not collapsing somehow. So best move is rook f1, just defending the pawn, and you can see the king has already kind of been alleviated of a lot of the pressure and stress. Wow, what a crazy game. One of the best games I think we've seen so far. And
Really
you can see
crazy.
Damian Nick really is still riding this high.
Really great to see Damian on the board. I mean, that's some huge momentum going into the second game. Still, not the rating favorite. I would still, if you're looking at the betting lines, the money odds based on rating alone, I would put it on Apex Chess, coming back and winning this match. But I don't know how they match up in Blitz, and also, Damian taking a win in the beginning, that's huge. Apex is black now. Damian's gonna have white. Yeah, it's a great advantage for Damian going into the second game.
Next game starting. Okay.
Yeah, well, we got the second game about to start, and yeah, I think Apex also took it like a good sport. I want to actually, maybe we could have listened in on him a little bit, but we do have some moves now on game 2, and frankly, I think Apex, he just blundered maiden 1. Obviously, it's a huge blunder, it cost him the game, but the match is still not over yet. He could very easily tie things up, force overtime, and still win the match. But of course, he was unable to convert that completely winning position, so that's definitely got to hurt the mental a little bit going into round 2 here.
Yeah. Okay, I thought this was a what is this called? I thought this was a collie, but maybe a collie is e4 d3. I guess this is just okay. Chess.com is just calling it an Indian game. I don't really know what to call this opening, but it's like a London without the bishop on f4. Do you have any experience in these kinds of openings, Joe? What do you think about this approach for
No,
Damien?
so I don't play Indian games. I don't play D4. I don't like to play against D4 openings.
What do you play against? Do you play Queen's Gambit Decline?
Um, typically, yeah.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I'll put a knight on F6, a pawn on D5. Typically like a pawn on E6. But
Yeah. Okay, it is calling it the collie now. Never mind. I was right, I guess. Now it turned into the collie. But
after
okay.
C4 maybe.
Uh, yeah, I mean, maybe that's just Chess.com kind of taking some liberties in what they call various openings, but I, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I actually like this approach from Damien. I mean, it's a little bit timid. I think some people would be like, ah, like what a boring opening, but there are some advantages, like you preserve your bishop on C1, which you might think like, oh, well, it's inside the pawn chain, so it's bad. But maybe it comes out with B3, bishop B2, and eventually you play D5, and it can be a good bishop. And on the other hand, your bishop's not out on F4, where moves like knight H5 can attack it. So there are some advantages to keeping your bishop inside the pawn chain. And white has very easy development. On the other hand, I don't think black's worse at all. I think black's probably equalized. But white doesn't really have anything bad to say about their position either. You know, very solid. Most of their pieces are developed now. Their dark square bishop still has a question of where it's going to go, but I think a natural move here like knight c3 or castles. I think Damien can be fairly happy about his opening choice.
Yeah, I think Damien's just happy to get a win in that first match, and now he has white. He's got draw odds, as we said, which would be huge, and that would be pretty upsetting, I think, for Apex to definitely lose this match. So I'm expecting some big things from Apex. He definitely brought the heat, really loved his aggression, just unable to find the tactics when he needed them, and definitely blundered a big one. So Damien, sneaky player as we saw, he's not going to give up. He's looking to win this match. So this is going to be a really big round two game. And you could tell Apex is already kind of using a little bit more time here in the opening with the black pieces.
Yeah.
Maybe a little nervous.
A little bit more cautious, very, very fearful over that last game. I mean, blundering checkmate in one, it's a really brutal way to lose the game when the move before you were still equal. Like the game was
Now
still
he
fine.
knew he was winning. He knew he was
Yeah.
crushing. And we were questioning his like pawn sacrifice later or in the middle game to get some activity. And I could definitely tell he was going aggressive, bringing the pieces to the king side, bringing the attack, and it was really working out for him, especially with the time pressure. But it just really bounced back to bite him when he blundered the mate in one. So I think that
Yeah.
Apex is still gonna stay composed. He's still very much in this match. His head's in the game. He's played a good move here. E5,
Okay. Yeah,
controlling the
serious
center.
question here, because you can't play like knight c3. Like e4 is still coming. It's defended twice. Um, you could try playing e4 yourself, but you have to worry about ed and how are you going to recapture. You know that long diagonal might be a little bit risky to open. So there's gonna need to be some calculation here. Like I don't think d5 works. I think still e4 is probably good for black, or at least okay. But d5 is a consideration. E4 yourself, bishop e2. Okay, d5.
Yeah, he goes D5, just attacking the knight. I think if you're defending, it's good to know that you don't necessarily have to react. You can create
Yeah,
an equal or stronger threat, and that's exactly what Damien has done here, attacking the knight. And so now E4 closes things. It makes sure
I
that
do
he
kind of
doesn't get
wonder
his pieces forced.
was e4 playable instead of knight b8?
Yeah, E4 is definitely playable. It was
Yeah,
the top choice. Knight B8 was second best. So
yeah.
E4
I think
maybe.
I think Apex would have had bishop pair there and it would have been nice, but on the other hand, what he's ended up with isn't the worst. I just think that we basically transposed into a normal-ish King's Indian, except the rook is on e8. And the rook really doesn't belong on e8 because eventually we want to try to orchestrate f5, and we can't really do that without our rook on the f file. So the rook will probably go back to f8 at some point to get f5, and that's just sort of a waste of time. On the other hand, white isn't particularly fast on the queen side with moves like a3, b3, bishop b2, but It does feel like white has a somewhat pleasant version of a King's Indian.
Yeah, Apex is down a minute, not significant right now, but you could tell he's kind of slowed down his pace. Maybe took some wind out of his sails from that first game. But he's rerouting his knight, maybe going to c5.
I
Um,
think, yeah, I think it's gonna be typical King's Indian attack idea. He's gonna play h5, knight f8, knight h7, and then try to get his knight to g5. I think that's gonna be his plan. Um, could also be simpler. He could just be going to c5. So we'll see. He'll do one plan or the other. He'll either just put his knight on c5, which is the more obvious way, or he'll put his knight on f8, and he'll try for h5, which kind of makes sense because you aren't really getting f5 anymore because your rook's on e8.
b4 here, just preventing knight to c5. That makes sense. But might open up the a file, might trade off a pair of rooks.
Yeah, I don't really know who that trade favors. I was trying to think like who prefers getting the rooks off here. I guess white because white's playing on the queen side, and then you can start playing like queen a4 and infiltrate and stuff. But it still feels like white's counterplay isn't particularly fast, and that black can start doing some stuff on the king side. But I really think black needs to do something on the other side of the board, like h5 or knight f8 and h5, or try to orchestrate f5 because yeah, I don't know, sort of playing on the wrong side of the board. Does it feel like that to you too? Like something like b6? I feel like that's sort of white's side of the board a little bit.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the trade might favor white because that's the side that they're playing on, but I actually think that if you trade uh, rooks, that actually kind of slows down white's attack a little bit. B6, I think, is fine. Like, it doesn't really change much. You kind of keep the A file closed for the time being. I think you're mentioning H5, knight G4 or something, but actually, what's
Yeah.
curious to me is saving the H5 square for the knight and going knight H5, trying to get into F4. I think that
I like that. I like that. I think knight h5 makes a lot of sense. The only thing for me is just like I feel like at some point the rook on e8 is gonna have to go back to f8, and I feel like that's just like it's hard to make that concession at some point. Like it is really nice to get a knight on f4, but I kind of wonder like what do we do from there? Like the knight looks amazing there, but I don't. I guess I don't totally know the follow up.
you just put pieces in good squares and the rest will follow
Yeah,
through,
the
you
rest will
know.
just
So
yeah. It'll
um
just work itself out. I
yeah.
think that maybe in response, like if they play knight h5, maybe as white we want to play rook e1, so knight f4 we can meet with bishop f1, and then eventually we can kick you out with g3 on a good day. Maybe h3, king h2, and then g3.
Yeah, what I like so much about moving the knight is you mentioned f5 as a constant idea, but what I want is for the knight on d7 to go to f6, so that our light square bishop opens up. If you ever play um, g3 there, then you still have knight h3 ideas with your bishop
I
controlling
do just
h3.
kind of wonder, like, okay, the knight on f6, yeah, but where does it go from there?
Well,
Are we going to g4
if you
or
put the
like?
knight on f4, then your second knight can go to f6 to h5.
Right, but then at least to me those knights feel kind of superfluous because like the knight on h5 is going to f4, but there's already a knight on f4,
You're just
and the
connecting
knights
your
are kind of
knight.
stuck.
Yeah, but if
Yeah,
you go like knight h3 and they ever take, then you have maybe
it is one of those things in chess. It's like concepts can be contradictory to each other. Like a superfluous knight is also a defended knight. So it's like it could be a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing for knights to be stepping on each other's toes.
wow,
It,
computer already wants f5 immediately.
yeah, I guess it's just saying like you don't really need the rook
Oh,
on
the e
e8.
pawn's pinned, right? If the e pawn ever takes, then you're forking on e4 now after this knight moved backwards.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, the more I look at it, I guess rook e8, it doesn't really matter. It's on the f file because,
Well, it's
yeah,
supporting
like,
your e pawn if their e pawn ever moved. Like it's making some tactics work out, right?
mhm,
Okay, so the
yeah,
knights are superfluous, like we mentioned. I'm wondering if the bishop wants to come to g4 here, but maybe white will just play h3.
yeah. I do have this concern for Apex that these knights are going to get jumbled. I mean, yeah, very like typical idea here for white I guess you can't do it now because the bishop can't go back to f1. But I was saying it before that you can slowly get the knight out of f4 by playing h3, king h2, and g3, and then the knight has, and with the bishop on f1 defending h3, and then eventually you can like claw the knight out of f4, and then if you put a knight on h5, for instance, and a knight on f4, then that knight on f4 has no squares to return. So you can
Exactly.
actually get your knight trapped by moving it
Yeah.
forward. It's
But I don't think Damien's gonna get a bishop on f1 anytime soon because they didn't play
no.
rook e1. They also played the knight on e2, and the knight on
He,
e2 is doing a good job of keeping the knight out of f4, but it definitely alleviated the support on e4 that was needed. So there was an opportunity for Apex to play f5, but that was missed now that the second knight has come to f6.
yeah.
So
F5
okay,
would have been a cool break. I mean, yeah, this is very, very
that was very tactical. It's a missed opportunity for Apex, not the easiest to find, but I do like Bishop G4. Damien didn't play H3, and now he has to trying to find a new home for the knight. Uh, Maybe he's gonna go backwards to D2, but maybe that's gonna allow a capture on E2, and then that's gonna allow the knight to get into F4 finally.
I was talking about earlier in the matches, like or earlier in the first match that we saw with Coda, where some games you expect there to be a lot of blunders, and some games you expect there to be like it to be pretty accurate overall. And this is one of those games, King's Indian, where you expect a ton of blunders to happen because the game is just so complicated. It's so difficult to understand how to trade. The center eventually is going to blow up, and yeah, at the moment, nothing too dramatic has happened. I think white or black's missed some chances with f5. Um, but yeah, eventually now with this knight coming to f4 and maybe the queen coming to g5, black's gonna have a really serious attack here, and it's gonna be a question of whether black is able to orchestrate that attack correctly, or if their pieces just get jumbled and they end up losing.
I like Bishop F3 here. Just
Yeah,
keeping the bishop on the board because we were mentioning like bishop on f1. We were also mentioning like some h3 weaknesses that the bishop could control, but black had to give up a light square bishop to put the knight on f4. So
that is a big bishop to give up in the attack, and I think that this is actually slowing down black's king's Indian typical attacks a lot. Like normally you need at least three minor pieces, and typically you want the bishop pair. Like the bishop on g7 is important to defend your king, and the light square bishop is very important in the checkmating for the king's Indian. So not having the light square bishop is extremely detrimental to the overall attack.
that being said, another piece that's really good at checkmating is the queen, right? So even though we
Queen and
lost
knight,
our
yeah,
if we
famous
lost our
combo.
light square bishop, we can put the queen on the light squares. Queen d7 to g4 is actually like a huge threat.
Yeah, it is, and White's gonna need to have to come up with a solution. I didn't particularly like knight f3 because of this idea of queen d7. Um, yeah, I'm actually not sure what White's gonna do about that. On the other hand, it doesn't look like mate. I mean, we can first off play if we really have to. We could play a move like h3, but I'm not a huge fan. Um,
H3, I'm just worried, like, again, if you bring the knight on f6 to h5, like, you're gonna have some serious sacks on, like, either f2 or h3, right? Because the second knight's gonna
Yeah,
hop in.
I am kind of flirting with danger, but I almost want you to try a sacrifice like that because at that point I'm gonna be up a piece, and then maybe I will either die or I'll be up a piece and win. That's there's some hope for me there. But also, yeah, it's like Black's attack does appear a little bit scary here, but if I get h3 and then maybe knight h2, I don't know if I'm that concerned about being mated. Maybe falsely so. Ah, b5.
Okay,
Okay,
the e-pawn is hanging. Wait, is it? What's the tactic here? It wants to sack, queen takes, and then queen g4. Oh my god.
wait, it wants to do what?
It wants to take on e4 and then play
Oh,
queen
oh yeah,
g4.
okay. Because then queen g4 is threatening knight h3 discover check and mate, I guess, simultaneously.
Yeah.
But what
Uh,
happens if knight d2 there? Okay, I don't know. That's a
the
complicated tactic. It wasn't gonna be spotted, but that
knight
was interesting.
d2. Oh, knight d2 just hangs the bishop on e2.
Oh, you just take it and you're just back. Okay, you just return material. Yeah, yeah. I guess there's no other knight.
Rough tactic. What else could you have done? Yeah, just queen g4 immediately, right? I mean, that's so good.
I mean, queen g4 immediately, definitely something like to g4. Yeah, like
Queen
I don't
g4.
know,
I mean,
but-
you're just winning. You're just winning material because you're threatening mate. You can take the bishop next, and then e4 hangs.
was knight takes e4 supposed to be some improvement over going queen g4, or were they like the same?
It's saying the knight takes is a little bit better. I mean, you're just taking the material immediately. You have the same tactic here, by the way.
Yeah.
But here, so
I-
queen g4. If they take the knight, then you're opening up the e file for your rook on e8, right?
I feel like it's a lot more obvious to go queen g4 first, and I really don't know why Apex is not considering going queen g4. Or is
Yeah,
he?
I
don't
mean,
know.
like, why play the queen to d7 and then play
Yeah.
h6, right? Like,
Maybe we should listen into Apex and see like what Apex is thinking, because I really don't know.
Here takes. No. I want to keep the knight here because it kind of tactically protects us.
he's looking at e4, which is funny. He's thinking about lifting a rook. That's so
Really
slow.
double the rooks.
I have to say, one thing I don't like about Damien's last move is closing up the queen side really limits the counterplay that you're gonna get in the future. Like
Yeah,
you are now sort of stuck to the king
Honestly,
side, where in a king's Indian, that's the last place you want to be
I don't know
stuck.
if he can actually.
You know,
do
b5
Yeah.
is a permanent fixture of the pawn structure on the queen side, and you will
Should
never play on the queen
takes
side now.
Here.
Yeah. Rook e7, really slow here from Apex. Like, I don't know what the hesitation is for,
Knight here. It'll do some move.
yeah, bringing the queen into g4,
Okay, so it
but
does-
Yeah.
now the
Okay,
e
but-
pawn is hanging.
Yeah,
So
the e-pawn's gonna be
probably
weak. I mean,
bishop d3, but then probably he's
I
gonna
do feel like-
double.
as much as I don't agree with Apex's approach, and I think that he
Now
should have been
there
more
is
clinical there,
tactics.
it is one of those positions
Yeah,
where
even
the lower rated
now,
player Damien will
takes
kind of just
takes,
fall
if you
apart
take
on their own if
here.
you just do nothing. Like Damien's gonna keep making decisions here where like, you know, the
Do we
e-pawn's gonna be
open?
weak now, and then like
They
maybe
take.
you know Apex's
the
bishop is
pawn,
gonna be
but it's still
open
pieces
and a
here.
monster, and it's gonna be very very difficult to just play moves as Damien. You're just gonna run out of ideas.
Yeah, that's unfortunate though, for Damien to think that like he was not able to keep the pressure, like b5
Let's
as
just
you
double
called
up.
it, really kind of alleviated
So they
things.
gotta bring the rook, yeah,
But
that
okay,
like-
out of the way.
e4
In this position, if there
is
was still a
defeated.
pawn on b4, you could think of ideas like
But with
c5
knight
to break
here-
through. You know, play rook c1, c5.
do
You
that.
could maybe play
This,
ba and like open the b
would not be
file and
good
bring
for
your
him,
rook
Yeah.
in there. Now you have no open files. You have no hope. You're just kind of waffling
Yeah.
around waiting for black to beat you. Which maybe they won't. I mean, that is just one hope that like black just won't find a way to win the
Time is
game.
completely equal.
Apex still needs to win.
Yep,
The
and
side of the board is
okay,
pretty good.
Damien doubling rooks back on the e file. Knight into e5 is nice.
Yeah,
You're
seems like a
attacking the
good
knight
square.
on f3 for
That's right.
sure.
Feels like at some point we'll be able to orchestrate a pawn storm with just like g5, g4. I mean, it doesn't really feel like white can do anything about that in the long term. So we just like set it up slowly, like king h7 or king h8. You know, maybe bring a rook to the g file.
Let's hear Damien's thoughts.
Four, potentially, oh, five, yeah. Don't love that. So let's bring him back.
Okay, so he saves the knight, but now f3
Queen
can be played.
g4, f3 or yeah. I mean,
Yeah, queen
again,
g4
just bringing the
also.
queen, you know, just bringing the stuff in. I guess queen g4. There's f3 for white.
You know, I mean, Apex has not played queen g4 for like the last 5 moves, so
Yeah.
it'd be kind of
we
weird if he
can't-
did it now.
Yeah, we can't bank on. I know. Now he plays it when it's like not
When
nearly
he allows
as good.
f3, yeah.
Yeah.
But Damien
Of
seems
course he does.
okay.
Of course he does,
does
yeah.
it.
On
Good.
on cue.
F3 definitely the best move.
F3 pretty much automatic. I mean, unfortunate because you actually have no counterplay and you're
Gotta
just
push this, right?
so sad. But
Let me make sure I'm
it's-
not, like, missing some,
it's
like,
no
big
counterplay, but it's also like how does
or something.
black win? It actually takes a long time. You need to like move your king and push the G pawn and the H pawn and like
Guess we can push
and like
this.
break through that way. But it's so slow. You'll actually need to take like 40 moves to break through or something. It's
Yeah,
gonna take
but
forever.
I will say, f3 looks like it is kind of defending and holding, but black has all the play, right? Like white has really no moves. There's no moves for the knight. There's no moves for the bishop. Like your pieces are
Yeah.
all stuck. So queen
But-
h4 here.
You know, the
And yeah,
time's
get the
getting
G
low,
pawn.
and we saw last game Apex in a completely winning position, Blunder mate in one. So if Apex, you know, fumbles low in time, blunders a piece, okay, the game could completely shift around. It shouldn't, but you never know. I mean, it's not immediately obvious how Apex is supposed to win this game, and in the meantime, Damien's just playing moves. I mean, yeah, it sucks, but all he can do is just shuffle around. There's no more activity. So
I think that okay, I didn't like I liked the idea of putting the queen on the H file and then try to push the G pawn. Um, maybe he's
yeah,
gonna try pushing the H pawn. Maybe try to put like the king up to the 7th and bring a rook to H8 or something. I'm not
I
sure.
like the idea of doing that extremely slowly. Like again, playing King H8, King H7, playing Rook G8, and then only
Yeah, he
then
is
pushing
pushing.
our H and G pawn.
Well,
Like,
he's starting with the H pawn. Here's my point. Black has the time to do all that because Damien mistakenly pushed B5 and closed the queenside. So you
okay, here's my
have all the
concern.
time to do
If
this.
if you play something like H4 here, right, and then White plays H3, you might actually have ran out of like. Then you need something like F5 to win the game. Maybe you still have a break with F5. But like you now actually only have F5 after H3. Like White's position does suck completely, and I think F5 will win the game eventually. But it's gonna be actually really hard. Like
Yeah, H3
that's your
played.
only way.
No, you can
Um,
get like your knight back to D7 to F6 to H5 now.
but what does
Knight
that
gets
do?
to
Like
G3,
that's great, but you
and
still have to
then
play F5.
it's gonna help you actually push F5.
Yeah. You should do that. No, I'm saying you should do that, but like he needs to realize
It's
that now
it's
his
very
only way to
slow.
win
He's
is
going for
he's
it.
doing it. Yeah, but
Which
now he like actually needs F5.
it's a hilarious re. Also, bishop to D4 is a huge threat. Love that.
Yeah, maybe it's actually so much of a threat that we have to play like knight b3, in which case, okay, maybe our position's so bad that
Or
we might lose faster than.
or you have to move the king. Okay, knight B3. But like, yeah, the knight's not going anywhere. It's every piece for white is purely defensive, and black
Yeah,
controls all of the breaks.
no, it's miserable, and White's only hope is if there was somehow a fortress, but it's never a fortress. But like the thing is that you know
Oh,
Black needs to win the game, and that's maybe not the approach.
okay, he
Because yeah,
trades
now King
knights.
King H1 maybe,
Hey,
or
we're
I
getting
don't
a
know.
huge raid from Anna Cramling. Welcome in. We are
Hey, what's up?
covering the Creator Cup. If you guys haven't heard of the, oh,
Oh,
that's a free queen.
what?
Botez Gambit.
Unbelievable. Okay, up to this point, I would just like to
Oh
say that the Anna Kremlin
no.
people, up to this point, we have had great chess. There has been no Botez Gambits like that. That is a crazy blunder to happen right after a raid, but that is
Maybe
very unfortunate.
maybe Damien felt the pressure of
Yeah,
the raid and the viewers
he
and
felt the aura from the Kremlin raid. Yeah,
but
I
yeah, I gotta fill you guys in on what's been happening so far. So first off, Creator Cup is essentially same format as PogChamps, as many of you probably have tuned in for back in the day when they were doing it. So essentially, it's 16 players. You have 4 groups of 4. So right now we're in the group stage. It's a round robin format. So every player will play everyone else in the same group, and then the top 2 players from each group go to the championship bracket, and the bottom 2 players from each group will go to the consolation bracket. So right now we're in the group stage. This is actually Group D. We have Damien Nick versus Apex Chess, one of the biggest mismatches of the group stages. But Damien Nick had a huge mate in the first game, and Apex now has tied it up. So we're actually going to go to a tiebreak game, 5-minute blitz, and you can see
wow.
the players' reaction here.
Yeah, you cannot feel good if I mean, sure the match is still tied and you can win in tie breaks, but that was really brutal to just blunder Botez Gambit in one move. You know that hurts quite a bit for Damien. And going into the blitz, I don't know. Have you been in these matches before, Joe? I mean, obviously not Creator Cup, but have you been in like a match format before and been in a situation like this where you just completely whiffed a game or played something terrible? How do you mentally reset and kind of get into the next game and say, okay, I still have a chance in the tiebreak?
So I myself have not played in something like this that I can recall. But obviously, you don't want to lose a game like that with Botez Gambit. Like he still had maybe a chance at some sort of fortress here with opposite color bishops. But yeah, Botez Gambit, it's rough. he had all the momentum after game one with a huge mate in one, but lost it all here. And now Apex is actually riding the momentum into tiebreak. So we're actually going to have to figure out which player had the higher percent accuracy out of the two games, because that's going to determine who gets white in this first tiebreak game. So it's going to be 5+0, no increment. Surely this should favor Apex, but still.
I don't know their blitz ratings, but I imagine that Apex is going to be more of a favorite in blitz, if anything.
Yeah, I would assume as so as well, but as we saw in the first game, anything can happen. Apex is prone to some major blunders, but so is Nick. So this is going to be very exciting. If you guys haven't seen these players, definitely go check them out. They're both streaming live right now, and we'll probably raid one of them at least when this is done. So this is the last match of the day. If you guys don't know about Creator Cup, surely you do now. So be sure to tune in for later rounds. This is going to go on for a few more weeks, actually, into December. So matches, I think, are Friday through Sunday, and lots of chess left. So the prize, by the way, for winning the Creator Cup, you get a signed chessboard not only from Arjun Erigaisi, but also from Hikaru Nakamura. So serious prize on the line. I'm sure whoever wins it is going to get it framed, put up on the wall or something. But yeah, actually, we're going to have the tiebreak game starting soon.
Looks like Apex is white.
Let's take a look into Apex while we get this game started.
Yeah.
Let's see what he has to say.
Tactics, then do puzzles. Study tactics.
Study tactics and do puzzles. He's giving the formula to success.
Okay, we have the white pieces.
And he's figuring out that he has white. He's putting his chat into emote only so he can focus up.
You know what's funny? My hypothesis about the rating gap in Blitz being higher is completely wrong. Damien's actually 1430 in Blitz, whereas Apex is still higher rated, but this is not as significant of a mismatch as the Rapid was.
Yeah, and Blitz, it's actually even more variable, right? So you might have a big rating gap between them and Rapid, but I think the faster the time control, maybe the better chances the lower rated player has.
Yeah. I don't love this opening from from black. I feel like the light squares are a big issue, and the double pawns in the center aren't the most pleasant. Yeah, something like knight h5 is kind of annoying, or knight h4. I mean, potentially going into g6.
Knight h4. I'm wondering if sometimes there's like these knight discovery tactics, but it just doesn't work out because the queen comes in hot, right? So
yeah, with queen h5, so you can't really move the knight on f6. But okay, wasn't played. I still don't particularly love black's position, but it does feel like if they castle long, it makes some sense. Even castling short isn't ridiculous, but I would probably veer towards castling long because our pawns look better on that side of the board. It's dynamic. White's also castling long. This could encourage black to castle short, but I don't really know.
I think white definitely missed some opportunities. I think especially after the Anna Kramling raid, they could have shown some cow theory, but maybe wasn't aware of the situation. So
yeah, the cow would have been a really critical choice. It's definitely the opening to play when you're in a must-win blitz match
with the Anna Kramling audience tuning in for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So here, there's a common blunder. Don't take the knight on d4 with your knight because you're going to get forked. But the queen is hanging, right? So queen decides to move. Do you think we'll see same-side castles? Probably after rook f8.
Yeah, or black will just not castle at all. I guess we'll find out. Rook f8 is an interesting move, though, because like you can't really defend the knight, but you also can't play knight takes d4.
So yeah, alleviates some pressure here, but this allows for black to kind of take some space in the center, although it didn't like this last move, e5. It would rather prefer c5.
I understand that, but yeah, I do think practically black is still fine. I don't see how white's going to capitalize on black's
I
inaccuracies
mean,
here.
but look at that knight on f5. Look at the bishop on g7, right?
It's cool. Yeah, I don't think you should take the bishop on g7, but I mean,
Surely.
the knight on f5 is cool. It looks good, but once we castle long, I'm not sure how much of an impression or how much of an issue that knight's gonna be. I mean, it might just sit there, and we might just be able to play around it. I like white for sure. White should definitely be better, but how much better? It's hard to say. And Damien's up a minute, by the way, on the clock. Speaking of time, um,
Yeah.
that's pretty serious for a game that. I mean, Black's position seems playable. I don't think Black is in huge trouble. I think he should play King B8 at some point and just get a game.
G4, the knight's permanently kind of locked in there. Also, thanks everyone for the follows. Really appreciate
Yeah.
it. Shout out to Alternate, Elenai, Chess Whiz, Flemish, Jambo, Big
But
and Funny.
now possibly knight c5 to play knight e6 and knight f4, and you get your own knight. That's an idea.
Okay, C3, trying to open up some files for your pieces and just trying to attack Black's strong center. If you could take on D4, I think that's going to be really annoying for Black. And
Yeah, I
that,
don't really.
yeah.
Knight b6 feels kind of going into no man's land. Like I don't really know where the knight went. But now, what's funny is now the knight can probably return and possibly get into to e5. Makes a lot of sense, but yeah, knight g6 was a strange move, but I feel like white didn't really do too much about it.
So after rook c1, that was kind of a mess for white because that allowed for Black to put the bishop to e5 and there's no stopping bishop f4. So
Yeah,
now this move isn't as good because the knight already made it to f3 and can take
and
immediately.
you lose a pawn. Yeah, and you're losing c5.
C5 is dropping with a threat on e5 and potentially doubling rooks on the c file, which is
Yeah,
essentially guaranteed.
this is very unfortunate. Yeah, suddenly the position went from perfectly playable for black to almost untenable. You're losing at least well, you've already lost a pawn. You're probably losing a second pawn, and the only open file currently belongs to white completely.
Yeah, so knight back hits the rook. I like this move. It's a tempo, and it just kind of slows down white's plans for a little bit for the time being. That being said, white obviously has huge chances to win, but it is 5-0 blitz, so there's no increment here. Anything can still happen.
Yeah.
It is only a pawn, and that extra pawn is the
Unfortunately,
pawn on f2, so it's not really going anywhere anytime soon.
yeah, Damien's completely lost his time edge though. In the meantime, I think that was his biggest asset going into this game, and it's really unfortunate that, I mean, going into this end game slash late middle game, and I think that losing that really critical 30-40 seconds he had over Apex is definitely going to cost him quite a bit going into this difficult position.
I just want Nick to play rook c8 and just trade off the rooks. I know it's counterintuitive. He's done it. I wish he did it like 30 seconds sooner. I think he needs to just try to stay up on the time, right? Try to just keep the pressure on the clock. Don't care so much about that pawn. Go for the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, baby steps. Let's get back to even time and then worry about trying to, be up on
Just
time.
yeah,
So,
trade rooks here. Bring the other rook over. Like let's get some moves going. I know.
I actually don't think you can do that. If you trade rooks and bring the other rook over, then I could take and play
Like
knight
queen into
d6.
e7. Oh, knight
Yeah,
d6. I'm not
yeah,
sure
maybe not. But
the
it
follow.
looked.
I like bringing the queen in though.
Yeah, I mean, also
Ooh, he's
trading
attacking the
queens is
apex.
probably the end game is probably gonna be quite good. But
Yeah, and that's the thing. Apex doesn't actually have to like really press, right? He's kind of chilling. If it is a draw though, we will go to another tiebreak game. Here, if I'm Apex, like maybe just a5, right? Okay, he trades
yeah,
first. Knight takes. Interesting.
I can't imagine this
Queen,
position being a draw. Apex has the
maybe
time.
queen
Well,
f8 is
less
annoying.
time than before, but yeah, this
Oh, this
position.
this doesn't feel right. Takes a6 would have been really annoying, but maybe a liability. Okay, yeah, trading off queens. I love this a lot. The knight's gonna get to f7. That's just gonna be another pawn drop.
Yeah, this night ending is not the kind of night ending where you have enough counterplay.
Yeah,
I guess
the pawns on G and H are gonna just promote for white.
maybe knight c5 you just try, but I mean even taking like
Just bring the king in.
knight
Oh,
takes e5 is
now
too
it
much,
takes anything really.
yeah.
Probably H6 is better because you're gonna get an outside pass pawn, right? And also you're gonna win the G pawn
Yeah.
next. Yo,
Yeah,
huge
the
raid
pawns
from Josh now.
are
Welcome
just
in. You guys are
dominant.
tuning in at the tiebreak of the last game of Creator Cup for today. This is Group D. I know Josh was playing in a Scrabble tournament, I believe in Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. I
Okay,
tuned
knight
in.
f4. There's some hope ish. You're still down 2 pawns, but you're getting a pawn back. Oh, what? Knight takes h3.
Whoops. Come on.
Knight takes
Okay, both players very low on time.
I mean, not only was knight takes h3 a pawn, but also f2 was
F2 was
dropping.
going to be falling.
Yeah, that would have
Okay,
been humongous
Apex. I
turnaround.
think Apex slowing down a little bit here. 30
Yeah,
seconds.
he's got to remember he actually has to win the game. Like even if he's completely winning, if he gets flagged, he loses. I mean that's
Oh,
what? Okay, things are.
he can't take the G pawn. He brings the knight back. Now he takes. Now the pawn's running.
Yeah.
Knight's going to get back to G6. Apex is up like
Okay.
10 seconds, though. It's the problem. And he's making another pass pawn.
Yeah, Damien needs to like be pre-moving everything, but he doesn't have enough urgency. Okay, now he does, but it's probably too little, too late.
What's going on? King's running back. Drops another pawn.
Yeah.
He's going to drop another. Oh, that was a free knight.
Oh, but it doesn't matter. It's too. Honestly, it's probably
It's just the
objectively
time.
losing.
It's a time. Yeah, the pawns are too much.
Yeah, it's
But he's going to
four pawns
flag.
versus the knight. I don't
He's
think.
going to flag. Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, I think honestly that was the biggest thing was the time. Like he could have maybe survived this position if he was the one up 10 seconds. You know, like 24 seconds versus 14 with the knight and 4 pawn. Maybe. You know, like there's some hope.
But
Wow,
I mean,
that was
give
close.
some credit to Damien to take it to tie breaks to begin with. We saw one of the biggest upsets
Yeah.
of Creator Cup history. And credit to Apex for not losing his cool, bringing it back, winning game 2, and then winning it again here in tiebreak to win the match. So
That was a
Apex
great match.
getting some much needed points there after losing that first game. So remained cool. Didn't lose his nerves and didn't
What do you
get
think was
tilted.
your match of the day?
Please bear with us.
There we
What's
go.
up, Hosta? Good to see you. Oh, did you wait? Hayden is.
Oh yeah, Dad, my cameras are off on purpose. We're trying to get the Discord call. If you want to go to Joe Bruin's stream, that's gonna have it's gonna have the stuff.
The stuff. We got the goods here.
Yeah, they got the good.
The good goods.
Joe Bruin's stream.
We're trying to get Damien's goods too.
It sounds so weird because my name's Damien as well.
We got two. We'll call him Nick maybe.
Yeah, you can call
Yeah.
me Nick. That's fine.
Wow, we have Magnus Carlsen's dad in the chat. Probably
Yeah, Dad.
sent in with
He's one of my loyal people. He's been there for almost a year now.
huge. Did you know that we got raided by Anna Kramling during your match?
Really? That's
Crazy.
awesome.
Yeah,
Poor
you
thing.
guys had a lot of people tuning in to see the end
What
there.
was it after I blundered mate in one?
Yeah, it was out. No one knows about
Okay.
that. We don't have to talk about
Cool.
that.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh shoot.
Yeah. Immediate first question. So how did it feel to blunder mate in one? Like were you devastated? How
Yeah, that was terrible because I thought that I had such a great attack going.
Yeah.
And I saw the line where I won the bishop at the end, but I was like, let's just keep putting pressure with the rook.
Yeah, it was always tricky though, right? Because if you ever took on h6 with the queen, there was like rook h7, and your h3 pawn was possibly hanging.
Yeah. I
but
also
it's no-
noticed he had like no time, so I was just trying to play quicker.
How dare you? Flag me?
I was trying.
Yeah. Well, it worked. It worked in the non-increment game.
It did,
Yeah.
it did.
Yeah, but no, it was good for you to find that with such little time. So, no, props to you for that win.
Yeah. So how do you come back though? Like, you're probably winning the game, and then suddenly, bam, instantly, mate in one happens. You're lost, and then you have to win the next game and win the tiebreak in order to win the match. Like, how do you, you know, mentally come back from being, match in the bag to like, oh, I might actually lose this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit frustrated throughout the first of that second match or second game, but you kind of have to just get your nerves and try to just play your best chess.
Hey, there
Did
you
you
go. You
feel
got your camera.
Did you
Sorry.
feel intimidated by the rating mismatch? Like, did you think like, oh man, 500 points difference? Like, surely I've got this in the bag, and then you lose the first match, and you're like, wow, I'm gonna lose to,
No,
this kind of mismatch.
no, I don't really like. I know for a fact I'm able to lose to people lower rated, so I never go into a match thinking, oh, he's 400 rating points lower than me. I'm just gonna smoke him, because I know chess is brutal, man. It doesn't matter. You can do what I did. So
Yeah. So I'm curious, did either of you do any opening preparation for the other, or did you do just like general opening preparation? Did you think about, before the match, like looking at any of your stuff?
no.
So the funny thing about me, I've been playing chess. My dad taught me when I was like 2 years old, but I never studied it ever once. My dad taught me like the four pawns opening when I was a kid, and I just did that the whole time. And then I got real into bullet chess for like during college and stuff, and that made me like 10 times worse at chess, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but then like literally like last month, my chat talked me into like learning some openings. So they taught me like the Old Indian, and they taught me like the Stonewall. So like that's literally what I've been trying to play for the last month. And yeah, I didn't do any prep for this game. I prepped hard for the game with Car Crash last week, and that I think my prep worked out pretty well. But I just played so bad because I was so nervous because of like the rating mismatch, which like had me like super super nervous. But this time I was so like down from losing to Car Crash in those games that like I just like didn't even bother practicing for this one. I was just like, I'll just give it my best, and try my hardest. Actually, try to play decent chess this time.
Well, I
Yeah.
think it worked out. You definitely had that first game, although I will say Apex really was bringing some heat and bringing some pressure. It looked like he had so many tactics to kind of end the game and checkmate you, but you held on there. And were you kind of lining up some tricks? Like, did you see he could have blundered when like, did you see it before it happened, or did it happen kind of in the moment?
That was purely in the moment. I knew like okay, like my philosophy is like if I can play something weird, I should play it because this guy's better than me. My best way to win, especially because he's starting to get low on time. I knew I was low on time. That gives him pressure to like go faster. I was like, if I'm gonna win this at all, I need to play weird. I can't play good chess at this point at the very end. So I was like, okay, I was like probably right here. Then probably take the rook. I was like, that's just gonna lead me dying. I think eventually. I was like, if I sack the bishop, that's totally off the wall, totally crazy. Probably a terrible move, but at least it's weird enough to where it might make something happen. But I literally did not see that option, that checkmate, until after. As soon as he did that pawn, though, I was like, oh. And yeah,
Yeah.
I went
Shock
hard
to us
after that
both.
happened. I ran out the room.
Yeah, that was an incredible reaction. And Apex, I think maybe that first game you were maybe even a little nervous. I think it was the point where you brought your knight back to H2 and it just completely like blundered a pawn that he ended up
Yep.
not taking. Like, does that kind of moment make you feel like, oh man, like I'm not playing my best right now?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because I realized I blundered the pawn after I moved. I was like,
Yeah.
come
So there
on.
was there was blundering the pawn on d4, and then there was also when you played king h1, so that you avoided the move before he could have played queen b6 and like queen
Yeah,
takes b2.
and
Uh,
I
so
blundered that pawn too.
so you were just thinking like, oh man, I'm blundering all these pawns. Like I wonder like what was your mentality at that point when you were like, man, I blundered this pawn, I blundered that pawn, I'm
Just
blundering every pawn
blundering
on the
pawns
board.
everywhere. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. We were curious about the second game because it looked like you were just like positionally kind of dominating. Once he played b5 in that King's Indian, it looked like he couldn't really play on the queen side anymore, and you just had like a free attack, and he,
yeah,
he really had nothing to do. But I was kind of wondering at some point, were you concerned that the position was going to close up so much that you weren't going to be able to break through when you played
yeah,
h4 and he played h3?
yeah. I was actually a little bit concerned about that, and like I'm not like I don't really play the King's Indian structures, so I'm not too well versed in like the ideas and such. So I was a little bit concerned with that, and if I was misplaying it, and
Yeah. And we
But
were also wondering with your knight on f4 why you didn't go for queen g4. Like if you were considering that and you wanted to play queen g4 a lot of times, we really thought like there were many moves for you to just play queen g4 and go checkmate him. But you were kind of just like, nah, you're very reserved. You didn't put your queen on g4 for a very long time
yeah,
until way later.
yeah, I saw after the game that I had like queen d4, and then if he brought the queen in to protect or something, like there was tactics all over the place. But
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
missed them. I missed any of the tactics, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I thought that
Damien,
if I brought the queen in, he would just kick me away.
for you in that game, walk us through the nerves. Like it looked like maybe for some time you were kind of holding on, although like Black definitely had all the play, but it was very closed. And then at the very end, you kind of collapsed. Was that kind of time pressure? Was that nerves? You just kind of had a moment of misjudgment.
Yeah. So you seem to forget that I'm dumb. All right. So I didn't
Oh,
realize I was losing that whole time. I was like, I
um,
was like, I was like, okay, we're closing it off. My whole goal kind of there was like I knew like I was under pressure with like that attack that was coming. I was like, okay, maybe my kind of internal goal there was like, okay, I'm gonna try to close things off as much as possible is my plan. And then at the very beginning of the game, I was like, all right, he has a bishop there. I'm really bad about seeing that bishop's on the diagonal. I always forget about him. I remind myself at the beginning of the game, don't forget about that bishop. All right, that bishop's there. And then yeah, and it just really fell apart. I think. I'm like, I think I was still fine. I think I was still surviving, and then I just blundered my queen.
so
So
it wasn't until that queen c3 move that you were sure that you were lost. Like you actually thought it was maybe okay slash holding until you fully blundered the queen.
yeah. I saw a world where I could be okay. Still at that point. Yeah. See,
Yeah.
as someone who's not as smart as y'all in this game of chess here, um, I don't know like the notation. I don't know. Like I have the one gift of hope. All right.
No, it was kind of funny because honestly, the quality of the match was really high. I think you guys played some of the best chess of the day, honestly. But it was funny because as soon as the Anna Cromling raid came in, and I was giving all this like, oh man, these players are playing great. Like, look at the chess. Queen c3 comes on the board. I'm like, oh wait. I'm like, wait a minute. This isn't Pog champs. Okay, this isn't Pog champs. We've got serious players here. Like, this was just a one-off. Like, it was great, honestly. Damien, you played. I mean, there was Queen C3. That was a bad move, but in general, like the quality of the chess was really high, and I felt like during the whole match, you had a serious chance against Apex. Throughout.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, you
After
put up a
after I
good
won that
fight.
first game, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I did it. I'm good. I won again after losing both games last week. I was like, all right, I'm happy. Whatever happens, I'm good with it. But I felt like hey, maybe I got a shot here. But I think Apex definitely deserved to win both those games.
I
In the end.
appreciate it, man.
well, once you got to tiebreak, what was the strategy there? I know that game got all the way down to the wire. It was definitely in favor of Apex, but then I think he blundered a knight in the time scramble. Like, was that a little bit of hope, or do you think the time issue was what it all came down to?
My goal in that game, I was like at the beginning, I said I'm gonna try to just play as fast because I haven't watched Apex games because I didn't prep for it or anything. I don't know if he's a bullet player or not. I know I'm pretty good at bullet chess, so I was like I'm just gonna try to play as fast as possible. But at some point halfway in there that game, I just totally forgot about that goal.
Yeah.
And
No, we were
and
noting
then
because at some point you were up 40 seconds, and we
yeah,
were like, wow, like this is great. Damien, like even if his position's not so great, you're down a pawn. We were like, wow, he's gonna be up so much on time that Apex might just lose. But then we got to the night ending and we look at the clock again, and suddenly it's Apex that's up 15 seconds and flagging you, and it's like somewhere in there a minute was lost, but I don't
yeah,
know.
I forgot about my goal. I got distracted by the chess. I should have just reminded myself that I'm speed, and
Yeah.
I just gotta go
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah, blitz games are a whole different mentality because you can't be looking for just the best moves. You
Yeah.
gotta really pay attention to the clock.
I'm kind of wondering, Apex, did you feel some fear in that night ending? Because it felt like you're cruising 2 pawns up, maybe 3 pawns up, and then suddenly pawns started dropping. I think at some point Damien had knight takes h3 but didn't play it and could have like taken all your pawns, and then you hung the knight. Were you fearful in the end game that you were gonna mess it up, or did you
Oh,
feel like it was in the bag?
100%. I'm always scared whenever I go into those because one of my biggest problems is just converting positions.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I knew I was like, okay.
But did you feel better seeing the clock and seeing, oh, he's got like 5 seconds versus 20, and I'm probably
yeah,
gonna win the
absolutely.
game on time?
Absolutely.
And you
And
had all
at
those
that point, I
pawns
was just
too.
like, let's move,
Yeah.
which is why I hung my knight.
Yeah, yeah. A positional sacrifice for sure that paid out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
We'll call it that.
let's look at maybe coming up in the future here. You guys still have a lot of chess left to be played. I think the group stage is still going on.
Yeah.
Apex, how do you feel about your chances making the championship bracket?
I don't feel really great about it because of how my round 1 went. So,
And
but we'll see. If I can get a good win over Car Crash, then maybe.
Yeah, because Car Crush currently is really dominant in your group, right? I think he's the
Winning,
only.
yeah.
Yeah, he's like the only one with points at the moment, or
No,
I'm
no,
not.
no. Farzy beat me.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's Car Crash and Farzi, right? Okay, so it's
Yeah.
kind of just like a two-horse race right now. But with this win, that puts you at a chance. I think if Farzi doesn't win his next match,
Yeah.
which would be against, I guess, Damien. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you saw Damien how he played against you today. If he
yeah.
pulls that out again, he definitely could beat Farsi. And
I'll start working with you.
yeah.
So yeah,
Not even-
I wanted to ask about that because I think Damien, you said that you weren't preparing so much for Apex, and Farzi's actually in the chat. He's kind of scouting out the competition here. He said you should keep doing that for your next match against him. But I want to ask Apex, do you have maybe any advice or tips to Damien, especially knowing that you really kind of need Damien to beat Farzi for your chances to make it to the championship bracket?
I mean, yeah. I mean, you can't go wrong prepping some openings if you actually want to win. But I don't know how easy it would be to prep against him because I don't think he plays all that much on chess.com. And he's a super solid player, but I would just say just go in there with the same mentality that you did with me and play your best chess because you did a good job today. Like you got to win over a strong player and you take that and
You just refer to yourself as a strong player.
yeah. Well,
I
compared
like
to
it. I like it. No,
I'll say he's a strong player. I mean,
He is
I
a
think
strong player.
I think all these
I like
players
it.
are
Own
strong
it.
players. I think Damien. I mean, this was the battle of the Damiens, right? So
Yeah.
either way, Damien's a winner.
Oh, that's interesting. So
True.
if Apex wins against Car Crash, then you're tied with him, which means that if you have a higher cap score, then you'll advance to the championship bracket. So
What is the
that'll be
cap
an
score?
intense match. It's like your percent accuracy in the game. So
Oh.
I guess you'll have to win and be accurate with your wins.
I thought that was just for. I don't know what the actual tiebreak is. Is that?
That's what I just saw in Discord. He might have met in like general for a tie. I think he's talking about a tie for in the group stage, but maybe Matt will clarify. But and in any case, the match against Car Crash will be interesting and
Yeah. It'll be the
could
decider.
Could be for all the marbles. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'll have to prep for it.
Yeah. Prep against Car Crash.
Maybe.
Maybe eventually he'll crash the car and you'll win.
We can hope.
It's on the car crash game for sure.
I have one last question before I let you guys go. I wanted to ask. Obviously, there's a lot of other groups playing. Is there any particular player or opponent that you'd be looking forward to having a match against?
Maybe in a different group.
There wasn't any in particular for me, but I guess one of the other people who are around my strength. I like playing people who are, pretty high level and get myself challenged.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a lot of other players that are like 1900.
Yeah,
That we've
exactly.
been watching. How about you, Damien?
I mean, as I think the lowest rated person in the tournament, love to play somebody. Like I think there's a couple other people who are like 1600 or something. Would love to play some of them, but also I see Gilby Fish in chat. He's the one who brought me into the tournament, so I'm super glad thankful that he did that for me. So love to play Gilby Fish. That'd be fun at some point. But he's pretty good, so I don't think I could beat him. But and so we'll get matched up. But
Gotta have some confidence, man.
yeah.
Shout out to
Yeah,
Damien.
especially
I
after
had
that.
no confidence, and it worked out okay.